Foreign Secretary Lord David Cameron said the UK and its allies could consider recognising a Palestinian state at the United Nations to make the process irreversible. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly opposed the idea, saying it would endanger the state of Israel.
Yes, it would.
National debt stands at $2
billion. Added that one of them had transferred to others for a planned attack. Violence in the West Bank has surged since the October 7th Hamas terror attack against Israel. The terrorist group Hamas called the operation a cowardly assassination. Israel says Hamas uses hospitals as cover and operations bases. Over in the Red Sea, the Houthis' true motivations are different from what they say publicly. That's according to several experts. For months, the Houthis in Yemen have been attacking Red Sea container ships, significantly disrupting global trade. And they say that they want to support Gaza to prevent supplies from getting to Israel. Experts say, though, this is not their true motivation. At a congressional hearing today, maritime expert Ian Rowlby explained they have far bigger plans.
The Houthis have seized on a convenient narrative that played into something that they wanted. They have opportunistically taken advantage of the Palestinian situation and made it a cause that aligned with their own interests, albeit hypocritically so. If we look at that hypocrisy, the Houthis have, over the last 10 years, killed more Muslim Arabs than Israel has in 75 years of its existence. The Houthis do not care about the Palestinian cause except insofar as it furthers them. Their main objective is to advance their own movement. Their movement includes goals to not only take over the remainder of Yemen, but to advance on both Mecca and ultimately Jerusalem. They see this as a global movement. Theologically, the Houthis began with a certain interpretation of how the world should be ordered.
Rowlby says that no matter how much the West bombs them, they'll continue to attack shipping, even if the West destroys all of their missiles and drones. He says they would find other ways like using remote-controlled bomb boats or unmanned underwater systems. Rowlby says the Houthis have incredibly little regard for human life. He says they have weaponized even food for their own people, and they have killed more people over the past 20 years than the number that have died in the Afghanistan conflict. Ukraine's president is preparing to replace his top commander, the Financial Times reported today. Zelensky on Monday offered Valery Zelensky, the top commander-in-chief of the armed forces, a new role, but the general is refusing the job. Replacing him would be the biggest shakeup of the Ukrainian military brass during Russia's almost 2-year invasion. President Biden today saying he has done everything he can to tackle the immigration crisis. Meanwhile, Denver is becoming the latest city that needs federal assistance to deal with the influx of migrants. NTD's Arian Pasdar has a border update.
Texas still showing no signs of following requests from the Biden administration to vacate Shelby Park in Eagle Pass. This comes as 26 attorneys general sent a letter to the Biden administration on Monday. They write, what you should do is simple, enforce the law and protect the border. If you cannot bring yourselves to enforce the law, get out of the way so Texas can. On Tuesday, Fox News asked President Biden if he could do more to secure the border.
That's not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked from the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people to judge it.
You got that authority, you moron.
And the city of Denver has become the latest city struggling to support all arriving immigrants. NBC News reports that the city is now limiting the days immigrants.
Absolutely has implications for day-to-day lives of Americans.
The Pentagon has released the identities of the 3 troops killed. They are all from the same unit based out of Fort Moore, Georgia. The drone strike that killed them originated from an aircraft that approached their outpost at the same time an American drone was returning. Officials say that led to uncertainty over whether it was hostile and caused a delay to the U.S. response. More than 40 people were injured in the incident. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman denied involvement, saying that the militant groups act on their own initiative. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Qatari Prime Minister said there was good progress after weekend talks with the US, Israeli and Egyptian spy chiefs. They discussed possible ways forward on a new deal to release hostages of the Israel-Hamas war.
The Prime Minister of Qatar on Monday said that good progress was made toward a new hostage deal between U.S., Israeli, and Egyptian spy chiefs who met in Europe over the weekend.
I think yesterday was good progress made to get things back in shape and to at least to lay a foundation.
Speaking to an Atlantic Council webinar, Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani said he hoped to present a framework for such a deal to Hamas. Qatar and Egypt have opened channels to Israel and Hamas and brokered a 7-day truce in November, in which Hamas freed more than 100 of the 253 people it abducted in the October 7 cross-border rampage that triggered the Gaza war. In return, Israel approved increased aid and released scores of Palestinian prisoners. One of the former hostages is Amit Susana. On Monday, she visited the burnt houses on Kibbutz Kfar Aza, where she lived. Security camera footage shared with Reuters shows Hamas gunmen dragging her in a white sheet across a field toward Gaza. She stumbles, falls, and is lifted onto one of the captors' backs as she kicks and struggles.
It took them over an hour to take me to the border. I was beaten up really badly. My entire face and body was bruised and swollen.
Susanna spoke on Monday as part of a campaign by families and supporters of the remaining hostages to focus attention on their plight.
I hope that the remaining hostages there are able to keep their faith alive and stay strong. But even the toughest souls can't hold on for such a long time.
More than 100 Israelis are believed still captive in Gaza.
Their main objective is to advance their own movement. Their movement includes goals to not only take over the remainder of Yemen, but to advance on both Mecca and ultimately Jerusalem. They see this as a global movement.
Rabi believes that no matter how many times the West strikes them, they will continue attacking shipping. If the West destroys all their missiles and drones, they would find other ways, such as remote-controlled bomb boats or unmanned underwater weapon systems. After starting in November, the attacks on container ships is ongoing.
For them to be shot at, as they were 3 different times on our fleet, one of which was an hour-long firefight that they were directly in the middle of, is just unacceptable. We've got to find a way to make the shooting stop.
Bud Dar is an executive at MSC Shipping Company. He says this series of attacks is unprecedented. The number one thing these container ships need is better communication devices.
Right now, we're using basically the radio. Or mobile phones if we're fortunate enough to have the connectivity. But having the communications with the combat vessels is vital.
David Heindel is the president of Seafarers International Union. He says there are 75 minutes between the time a missile is launched and the time it hits a ship. He said faster communications would help the ship avoid danger, a danger the U.S. may have helped cause.
In 2018, the U.S. Was part of a major effort to prevent the government of Yemen from retaking the port of Hodeidah on the Red Sea coast. That is now a critical strategic failure on our part, because if the government of Yemen controlled that sea access, we would perhaps not be having the same conversation we're having today.
Back then, the U.S. didn't want Yemen's government to access the Hodeidah port for humanitarian reasons. Now, the Houthis control the port and are using it to launch their attacks. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
Now, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee held a hearing today on the Red Sea crisis. They're noting the critical role that this area plays in global shipping, but also how the fallout of the pandemic had on supply chains. Now, are we gearing up for a similar fallout on our supply chains?
We're getting close, and there are multiple factors that are coming into this. So, as we've said before, about 12 to 15% of the world's global trade passes through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, either leaving the Mediterranean or going into the Mediterranean. And it's primarily a route that connects European countries with Asia as well as with Africa and India. So there's not a ton there that's going to impact the United States, with the exception of oil. About 8 million barrels of oil per day go through the Red Sea. And if that starts to slow down, it's going to cause a great deal of trouble. But the other part that is hurting is we're seeing issues as well with the war with Ukraine and Russia impacting the ability of Ukraine to export grain. And that goes all over the world. There is something going on the other side of the world, too, with the Panama Canal.